Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. We're in Sherman Oaks, California, and we're at We Are Here, which is Linda Perry's studio and also a record label, management company, and a publishing house. We're here with Pete Molinari. Pete, it's great to see you. Appreciate you taking time for us today.
Of course.
And I'm looking forward to chatting with you about what's been a very interesting career to me, the way you've kind of developed things. I've been checking out some of your music, and I'm really intrigued by the blend of things that you do. Tell us a little bit about how you bring together folk and blues and some of the pop influences.
I just kind of like go usually from record to record, and whatever I'm having a heavy influence with at the time. All I was saying that I'm listening to a lot of classical music. I don't think I'm going to kind of jump into that world right now, but it's what I listen to. I can't see myself being a conductor quite yet. But I tend to be what some might call a bit old school about stuff, and a bit this and a bit that, or they use these vintage words and such. But I just like a good song, really. I don't much care about the format of stuff. I kind of really like a good song, you know, whether that's reggae or pop or rock and roll or folk or country. I don't mind.
Right. It's interesting to me, looking back at some of the things you've done, how those different influences will come out on a particular song. You know, this one will have a little bit more of an old school folk kind of a vibe, and this one will be a little bluesier. Yeah,
I guess I'm one of those people that doesn't care much to hide. If I'm influenced by someone, I kind of let it impact me quite big, you know. Right. So there's a lot of them. I guess every artist has them. Mm-hmm. But also, you know, it can also depend on the producer you're working with too. Like, you know, the first thing I did, I think, dictated the pace in a way with an artist from England that I worked with, that I knew since I was a kid, who was kind of really, he's a painter and a writer and a musician and heavily into blues. So I guess his whole aesthetic was to record on an old tape machine, and it worked for me. That's what I wanted at the time. And then the next thing was with a producer that was heavily into the kind of 50s and 60s Nashville recordings of Chet Atkins, you know, and they'll be into a particular production too, you know. And a lot of it has often been analog, not mainly through the choice of just like it being vintage or something like that, but I guess I like the way old records were made. So, and I like being in the room with musicians. Right. So I don't care that much about the gear. I think it all looks great, and I think a lot of people out there probably think that I care a lot about the analog thing. I think I care more about just recording with musicians on the floor and it being as intense performance as I can get, you know. So, you know, whichever way someone works in that side of the room, whether that's Linda or Liam I've worked with in London, or Bruce or whoever, I kind of like know that they know their world, and I just want to, you know, deal with mine pretty well on the floor with the musicians, you know. Right.
The Linda you mentioned there is Linda Perry, who is one of the partners in We Are Here, which is where we're at. Yeah. Tell us how you made the connection there and how you're working in with the group.
I came over to America on this last record I'd recorded in England, and came over to tour with, you know, different bands and on my own and this, that and the other, and I can tell you more about who I toured with when it comes to mine, but I just came over mainly for that record, and then hung on here for a while, kind of just because it felt like I hadn't spent a lot of time in LA. I had in New York before, but I started to meet a few different producers, and I thought it might be nice. I'd never recorded in LA. I'd recorded in Nashville before, and I'd recorded a little in New York and mainly in London, but it just felt, I'm always about kind of, if I'm in a place, there's a reason for it. Right. You know, You ever feel that? You know, absolutely, it's like, well, there must be some reason for me being here at the moment. And I started to meet, like I met this old school guy, Lenny Warnaker from Warner Brothers, you know, they'd been around a long time. And I guess, you know, just making different recordings with different people. There's a friend I met through someone in England, Bruce Whitkin, another guy that I was in LA, he's in LA, I went to his studio, started to make some recordings. And, you know, just getting them out to different labels and different people. And it came to Linda, and I had come over and chatted with her, and she kind of handed me a guitar and told me she'd heard some music, you know, and then handed me a guitar and was like, I think she wanted to see if I was actually the real deal. Right. I played a song and then it was kind of all from there. It was really cool. And although I'd already achieved the recording of a lot of recordings to give to her already at that point. I had recorded with Bruce and Lenny and other people. She immediately was wanting to do some recording with me, which I found nice, you know. Although she runs a record label and all that stuff now, she still loves to be in the studio with musicians, you know, which is great. Right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I was interested to, looking out inward toward you know, some of the things you've done in the past. It looks like that what you did is you came over from London and then kind of immersed yourself in the blues scene in the Village for a while in New York, and then kind of took a tour down through New Orleans and Nashville and kind of immersed yourselves in those different musical cultures. I mean, that's pretty cool. Tell us what you absorbed in doing that.
Well, I kind of like, I'm always, immersed is a good word. Maybe I do that a bit too much sometimes. I kind of, you know, if I'm in a place, I really want to soak up the influence, and you know, that could be in Europe or here or wherever. You know, you discover a new writer from a certain place and you want to find out about them and what influenced them and such. And I have a big love for literature as well, as much as music. You know, I've written plays. I haven't really produced one full scale yet, which I really want to do. Written plays and written a novel, and I did release a small collection of poetry. So I'm influenced by a lot of things, you know, painters, musicians, writers. I guess with music, you know, America did have a big impact on me in a way. I mean, I'll give you a short little background. My parents are Mediterranean. My dad's from Alexandria in Egypt. My mum's from Malta. My surname's Italian. I come from that kind of background. So the first music I heard really was like opera and things like that, which I really appreciate now. I mean, I listen to some, you know, Maria Callas and all these people still. But somewhere along the line, I think through family members, I come from a big family, and my older brothers had a big collection of rock and roll, you know, and it was mainly that before the folk thing and you know, those kind of songwriters and blues I discovered through mainly just my own research and, you know, meeting Billy and other people, Billy Childish that I worked with early on. But the early thing when I was a kid of listening to my older brother's records, you know, my uncle's records, was mainly you know, I guess a way for me to get away from listening to the Italian music my dad was listening to, which I really appreciate more than ever now. And I listen to a lot of classical and stuff. But like, I think for everyone, right, rock and roll, for some reason, that sound, I don't know what it is, feels like an escape. I think it did for the people in the 60s and the 50s. It felt somewhat rebellious. Maybe it doesn't feel as rebellious now, but it does feel like, it feels like it has an element of freedom to it. And I just felt I felt that, I guess. I just love the sound of guitars, and before I could ever play one, you know, I love the sound of this idea that as much as I love these big classical pieces and love listening to them, you know, the idea that you can sum something up in 2 or 3 minutes felt great to me. You know, it's like you can, you know, it's another thing to do what Mozart and Beethoven does, but it's like, wow, you could just kind of like write this 2-minute song and kind of say all you want in it. I mean, I think as a kid that really appealed to me, you know? Sure. And still does, you know? Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about the process. How do you write a song? Do you come up with the music first, the lyrics first? How does it happen? It's usually having a, you know, tinkling around on the piano pretty much, or a guitar, and just finding a melody, and then finding what I want to write about. You know, I tend to like the kind of titles to stuff. You know, I remember like having books of Oscar Wilde and Alfred Tennyson, and as a kid in England, you know, Shakespeare and all that stuff, and the title that you would, Hamlet or whatever, or, you know, the Ballad of Reading Gaol, those kind of things that draw you in, that kind of drama to something, right? You know, appeals to me, and I guess I do that with a song. I tend to not start to write until I've, you know, got a strong melody, and then I've got something, you know, maybe a title or something that's really gives me an idea what I want to write about. I don't really begin until then, I find. You know, there might be the odd time I might have just started to, you know, scribble about stuff, but often I kind of like feel like that's a good title. I want to write about this, or it could be something really just playing around with words and having fun, or it could be something a bit more meaningful, you know.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you have new music coming out. You did a video with Evan Rachel Wood?
I did.
Yeah, tell us about that.
It was really good fun. I originally had this song that I'd recorded with my friend Bruce Witkin in a studio not too far from here in Valley Village, and originally we had an idea to do some kind of slapstick thing. I'm a big fan of old movies and, you know, Charlie Chaplin and all that stuff. So I thought that would be fun. And we started to, but I think Linda had an idea actually, which we'll eventually use for something. That's what happens with art, right? You don't use it the first time; it ends up on something else. But we were toying around with the idea of just creating a little film, you know, some kind of cop and robber chase or something down by the beach, or something that would be really kind of show my little English guy living in Los Angeles kind of thing, the contrast and all that stuff. And it, you know, it just started to get complicated with all of these different places and ideas that we wanted to put together. So I just one night I was just like this. It just felt I'd done a recording session here and I loved how it looked, and it just felt good for that particular song to do a kind of rock and roll throwback thing, I guess. And I just knew I would be able to have some fun with styling the whole thing, because I really like clothes and I like to have a lot of fun with that. And I was calling around to Evan and Nicole and all of those people before, saying I'm going to bring a bag full of stuff. And, you know, it ended up a really fun day, and it looks cool and stylish. And I think it just gave the song, it just fit, you know, it gave the song what was needed. Right. I remember it being really hot in here. You know, I remember one of these guys that was filming, good bunch, I think it was Colin or whatever, standing there with one of those kind of air things blowing right at me. But yeah, it was kind of in the middle of summer. But it was really good fun, and I like that song, and I like how the video turned out. And it was lovely to have Evan and Nicole and other people. You know, it's nice. Always add something to have a guest like that.
Of course.
You know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so what's coming up next?
I guess the next song or single and a full album. That's what I really want to do. I've been, you know, between Bruce's studio and Linda's, I've got all of these songs. And I think I'm an album kind of artist. I know today it's gone the digital way a lot, even though that's kind of brought a lot of vinyl back, which is nice. Right. And I love listening to records that way. I get amazed at going into places like Amoeba or the Last Bookstore, and you know, you can pick up these box sets for $5 or something. You know, it's like amazing. Yeah. And I have these, you know, the labels I've been on in England have always released a vinyl record of mine. It kind of, to me, it doesn't really feel like I've made a record unless it's like that. Right. Yeah. You know, I've got something. Just the artwork, everything. Right. But so that is what I really want to do, and maybe another video for another song. And we did record last year. This Linda had this idea when I first, actually on the first day I came here. She was like, "I love the way you dress and this, that, and the other. And it's a big part to what you do. I'd like to shoot a film of you in some way." It began kind of like maybe we'll do like a 10-minute film in here. You know, just inviting friends and musicians, and just a film of how a record's made, you know. Sure. And then within a week, that idea in her head grew bigger, and she was like, "Well, let's do it in Abbey Road, or let's do it in Sun Studios, or, you know." And we ended up doing it in Capitol Studios with Don Was, which is really cool. And Evan was a part of it, and Ronnie Spector, and Jacob Dylan, and a bunch of really great musicians, and it was just a beautiful day. You know, really, that studio's fantastic, and Don's a great guy. And you know, we were filmed there, kind of like as it would be a documentary about making a record in a way. But in that particular studio, it looks like a film, because it's so cinematic and so. You know, it was one of the best days I've been involved in so far in any studio, to be honest. Awesome. So I can't. I've seen some clips of it, and we're just going to edit that and have it, I guess, as some companion piece alongside the record. Nice. And I the other things I like to do is I just write a lot, so I'd love to produce a play at some point. I mean, this is all aside from what I do with Linda and musically, but I'd love to, you know, do some stuff in theatre and publish some more literature and stuff like that. You know,
Right.
that's the kind of artist I want to be.
All kinds of
doing.
art stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot happening here in this building, which is so cool. Congratulations on all that.
Thank
This
you.
will be your 5th album.
This will be my
the upcoming one, correct?
Yeah, my 5th album, and the first one really, I guess the last one actually, I did work with a kind of a record label here, but most of them have been on record labels in England and distributed here, you know. So this is the first time I've actually really been here, living in America, signed to a record label, to a production company, you know, to this company of We Are Here and their whole vision of stuff and their record plant and all this stuff, which is,
Right.
I like the old school ideas, you know, and
Yeah.
you've got to kind of obviously keep that fresh with a lot of new things too. It can't all be old school, but it feels really good to me to be a part of all of this, and I'm going to Sundance Film Festival this week, which
Nice.
I've never been to, and just playing a show there. Yeah, it all feels really cool. You know, if someone said to me 5 years ago even I'd be living in LA, you know, I never really would have. It wouldn't have been a place New York always felt like a place I'd live because of, you know, just the whole thing. It's a lot more like London, a lot more like those European cities. And LA always felt good to kind of come to and play the odd show in. But I never thought I'd kind of like get to. It took me a while.
Here, right.
It takes about a year to kind of get to know where everything is. But
Right.
you know, met some really good people here. It's all about the people you're around, no matter where you are. You know.
Right.
So it feels great.
That's awesome.
You know, I love to be in a studio. I'm glad we're doing this in a studio.
Yeah, absolutely. Where else would you do it? It's awesome.
Indeed, yeah.
Pleasure.
Thanks
so much for your time.
Mitch. Absolutely.
And
Anytime.
congratulations on all the success, and we'll watch for what's happening in the future.
Great. Thanks very much.
You
Thanks,
bet.
guys. Thank you.
And thank you for joining me here in Sherman Oaks, where we are here, and I am Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.